For most people living near the quiet shoreline of Shoreham, New York, Warden Cliff Tower was nothing more than a strange wooden giant rising out of the trees. Locals called it a lightning stick, a radio tree, and even a weather machine because no one truly understood what it was meant to do. But inside Tesla's mind, the tower held a purpose so bold that he shared it with almost no one, not even the man who funded it. When JP Morgan agreed to finance the project, he believed he was investing in a global communication system, something that would beam messages across oceans faster than any telegraph wire. It sounded practical, profitable, and perfectly aligned with the booming electrical age. But Tesla had another plan, and it was far bigger than global radio. He wanted to turn the entire planet into a conductor of limitless energy, a source that anyone, anywhere, could tap into without wires, fuel, or power companies acting as gatekeepers. Tesla's notes reveal how deeply he believed the Earth itself could transmit energy like a living circuit. Beneath the tower, he designed an underground structure most people never knew about. Iron pipes driven deep into the soil, stretching down toward the water table. To him, this was the anchor point, the grip the tower needed to interact with the planet. He believed the ground could carry electrical waves the same way ripples move across the surface of a lake, except these waves could travel around the entire globe. The massive copper coils inside Warden Cliff were built to do exactly that. They were designed to create powerful pulses that would shoot down the grounding pipes and out through the earth, while the tower's metal dome pushed a matching field into the air. Together, the ground and the sky would form two halves of a natural circuit, one that didn't need wires, grids, or generators. If Tesla was right, then light, heat, and power could appear anywhere, on mountaintops, in deserts, inside remote villages that had never seen a single electrical pole. Anyone with the right receiver could pull energy directly from the world around them, as easily as tuning into a radio frequency. But that idea came with a dangerous implication. If energy truly became universal and freely distributed, then the entire business model of electricity would collapse. Investors couldn't profit from what they couldn't control, and Morgan had built an empire on controlling resources. Yet Tesla never slowed down. He kept building, designing, and calculating, convinced that Warden Cliff was the first step to a future where energy belonged to everyone, not just the powerful. What he didn't expect was how quickly the project would shift from a bold dream to something far more secretive, because as the tower grew taller, whispers began to grow with it. Rumors that Tesla wasn't just making a communication machine, but something capable of...
The night Tesla chose for the full power test wasn't scheduled, announced, or written in any official logbook. It was a quiet spring night in 1903, long after the workers had gone home and the last train had rolled past the shoreline. The tower stood in near total darkness, its wooden frame rising into a sky so still that even the ocean seemed to be holding its breath. Only two people were awake inside the control room, Tesla and his young assistant. She later said Tesla moved with an intensity she had never seen before, checking instruments, tightening bolts, and reviewing scribbled equations as if something had pushed him to act sooner than planned. There was no audience, no investors, no newspaper photographers, just the man who built a tower and the one person he trusted to witness what came next. Tesla gave a small nod. She flipped the first switch. A low hum rolled through the building like a heartbeat waking up. The coils began to vibrate, softly at first, then stronger, gathering power and rising waves. The sound shifted, growing deeper and sharper, until it felt less like machinery and more like the entire tower was inhaling. The floor trembled. Dust drifted from the rafters. The copper windings glowed faintly as massive currents surged through them. Static filled the air so strongly that the assistant later said her hair lifted from her shoulders without any breeze at all. Then the tower spoke. A blinding arc of white-blue energy cracked open at the top of the dome, rising into the night like lightning that had forgotten how to fade. It didn't flicker. It held steady, stubborn, bright, and alive, lighting up the coastline with a glow strong enough that fishermen miles away would later insist they saw the sky explode for a moment. And the strangest part hadn't even happened yet. Along the remote shoreline, where no electrical lines had ever been installed, small homes suddenly lit up. Lamps flickered awake inside empty cottages. A barn lantern glowed even though no one had touched it. Light bloomed in places that had never been wired for anything. Tesla didn't cheer. He didn't smile. He simply stared, whispering calculations under his breath while the instruments around him swung wildly into ranges they weren't built to measure. The assistant said he looked both amazed and afraid, as if the tower was doing something even he hadn't fully predicted. Then, the warning signs hit all at once. Telegraph operators across Long Island later reported that their signals crashed without explanation. Switchboards went silent. Needles on Tesla's gauges spun erratically. One of the generators at the base of the tower began to smoke. The resonance between the earth and the tower had slipped out of balance. Before the assistant could shout, Tesla was already at the master lever. With a sharp pull, he forced a shutdown. The humming vanished instantly. The arc above the dome died, leaving behind a darkness so sudden it felt unnatural. The ground stopped shaking, and the static faded into a suffocating silence. For a moment, Tesla didn't move. He kept his hand on the lever, eyes locked on the instrument panel as if the machines were still speaking to him. Then, in a soft voice, almost lost in the quiet, he said the words his assistant had never forgot. It works. But as she would later explain, Tesla and his assistant believed the danger had passed once the machinery went quiet. The tower no longer shook, the coils had cooled, and the room felt normal again. At least as normal as it could after witnessing something that defied every electrical rule of the era. They started locking up the control panels, gathering Tesla's scattered notes, and preparing to leave for the night. That's when the assistant froze. She had glanced out toward the fence line, expecting to see nothing but trees and darkness. Instead, she spotted figures, still, dark and silent, standing just beyond the edge of the property. It took her a moment to process what she was seeing. There weren't one or two men, there were several, and they weren't hiding, they were watching. Their uniforms didn't match the local police, the town's night patrol, or any of JP Morgan's known security staff. There were no badges, no lanterns, no identifying marks at all, just dark coats and rigid posture, as if they had been waiting for this moment, not stumbling onto it by accident. The assistant later said it was their stillness that unnerved her most. They didn't whisper or shift or try to approach. They simply stood as if they were listening to the very air around the tower, listening for something only they understood. She tugged Tesla's sleeve. When he turned and saw them, he didn't speak, he didn't call out, he didn't demand an explanation. Instead, his face tightened, and for the first time that night, he looked genuinely afraid. These men did not belong to any team he recognized. They weren't Morgan's men, they weren't curious locals, and they certainly weren't engineers. Whoever they were, they had arrived with purpose, and they had arrived prepared. By the next morning, the assistant understood why Tesla reacted that way. News of the late-night test never reached the newspapers, yet somehow word had already traveled through private channels. Before sunrise, a letter arrived for Tesla, hand-delivered, unmarked, and ice-cold in tone. It warned him that the recent discharge event had raised serious concern. It accused him of creating uncontrolled energy waves that could travel unpredictable distances. It urged him to stop immediately. But the letter wasn't the disturbing part. It was the final line. Your activities are now under observation. The assistant later said she didn't know whether that meant the silent men worked for a rival inventor, a government division, or a foreign power. But she was certain of one thing. Someone had been alerted long before Tesla flipped the switch. And whatever Tesla unleashed that night drew out. The warning letter should have been the start of a long discussion. Maybe a tense meeting, or at least a chance for Tesla to explain what had happened. But none of that occurred. Instead, everything unraveled with a speed that made the assistant believe the decision hadn't been made overnight. It had been waiting. Just days after the test, JP Morgan cut all funding. No explanation, no negotiation, no final visit to review the results. One moment, Warden Cliff was receiving steady support. The next, every dollar vanished without a trace. It was as if the tower had suddenly become toxic to anyone associated with it. Tesla's team felt the shock immediately. Workers stopped showing up because they weren't being paid. Engineers left when they realized the project had been quietly abandoned. Orders for parts were canceled, deliveries reversed, and construction halted so abruptly that tools lay scattered for weeks like frozen fossils of a dream that had been alive only days before. But the disappearance of money was only the beginning. Soon after the funding collapse, official inspectors began appearing at the site. They arrived with papers that looked legitimate, though none of them ever said what agency they represented. At first, they asked harmless questions about safety codes and electrical risks. Then the questioning changed. They moved through Tesla's workspaces with an authority that felt less like inspection and more like confiscation. The assistant remembered how they walked straight into the restricted rooms, places even some of Tesla's own staff never entered. They opened drawers, moved equipment, and examined every piece of machinery without explaining what they were searching for. When Tesla protested, they ignored him. He had no power left to stop them. Crates started disappearing next. Large wooden boxes filled with custom coils, meters, oscillators, and metal components Tesla had built by hand were hauled out of the facility and loaded into trucks. The assistant watched as some of Tesla's most sensitive instruments, devices tied directly to his wireless energy research, were taken without any paperwork or signatures. It happened so fast that she suspected the men knew exactly what to look for. The most devastating loss came from Tesla's notes. Whole folders vanished from his work desk. Overnight, technical drawings, experiments, frequency measurements, resonance calculations, gone. These were the documents that explained how Warden Cliff operated, the very heart of the system that had lit up the shoreline during the midnight test. Tesla searched frantically through the lab, opening cabinets and flipping through stacks that were suddenly thinner than they should have been. Nothing was left. The assistant said he looked hollowed out, like someone had stolen not only the tools of his work, but the future he was trying to build. He kept asking himself the same quiet question: who took it? No one answered. Whispers from the townspeople didn't help. Some claimed the visitors were federal men. Others said they were foreign agents. A few believed they were hired by Morgan himself, ensuring no usable piece of Warden Cliff would survive. No rumor ever led to proof, but the truth didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. Warden Cliff, once Tesla's boldest creation, had been stripped down until it was nothing more than than a silent tower with no purpose. Tesla stopped talking openly. He worked in short bursts, then retreated into long stretches of quiet, as if every new idea might be taken before he could finish it. When his assistant finally dared to ask him if he planned to rebuild the project, he gave her a single answer she never forgot. They realized it worked, and that's why they stopped it. From that moment on, Tesla never again performed an experiment on the scale of Warden Cliff. The tower stood abandoned, rotting under salty air and harsh winters until the day crews arrived.
Tesla's life after Warden Cliff slowly folded into obscurity. He moved between small labs and rented rooms, chasing ideas he could no longer afford to build. To the outside world, he seemed like a genius past his prime, eccentric, scattered, and quietly fading. But behind the scenes, he kept meticulous notes, pages filled with diagrams, formulas, field measurements, and strange sketches that didn't resemble any known machine. By the time he died in January 1943, Tesla had been living in room 3327 of the New Yorker hotel, surrounded by trunks locked with complicated latches only he understood. Inside those trunks were decades of personal notebooks, many of them connected to Warden Cliff, high-frequency transmission, and the resonant theories he never abandoned. When hotel staff discovered his body, they made a routine call to begin the standard procedure, but the response that followed was anything but routine. Within hours, officials arrived, not just local authorities, but men from a government office most Americans had never heard of, the Office of Alien Property. The name suggested foreign assets, wartime controls, and procedures meant for non-US citizens. Yet Tesla had been a naturalized citizen since 1891. Their involvement made no sense on paper, but they didn't hesitate. They sealed off his room, ordered hotel staff to leave the hallway, and began cataloging everything Tesla owned. Trunks, suitcases, filing cabinets. Every container was opened, tagged, and carried out under armed supervision. Witnesses described the removal as swift, silent, and unnervingly efficient. By the end of the day, Tesla's life's work had vanished into government custody. The official inventory created afterward listed the documents in remarkable detail. Thousands of pages on oscillators, wireless signals, and experimental devices were logged. Yet when military engineers and FBI analysts later reviewed the list, they noticed something disturbing. Some entries had been crossed out, others had been replaced, and entire sections were marked with a single word: relocated. Not lost, not destroyed, not classified, relocated. Exactly where they were moved was never stated. No chain of custody appeared in the follow-up records. No signatures, no receiving department, just blank space where answers should have been. The files that disappeared included Tesla's notes on Warden Cliff's underground grounding system, detailed frequency charts tied to global resonance, and sketches of what appeared to be compact versions of the original tower's transmitter. These weren't idle musings. They were the operational blueprint of Tesla's most controversial invention. Around the same time, other documents tied to a project Tesla called Teleforce, later sensationalized as a particle beam and rebranded by newspapers as a death ray, were also flagged as sensitive and removed from public view. Yet even those dramatic plans didn't vanish entirely. Only a few. The rest stayed in the files. But the energy transmission papers? Those were the ones consistently marked relocated. In the 1980s, decades after Tesla's death, a batch of declassified FBI documents made their way into public archives. Buried inside were references to these missing Warden Cliff papers, again annotated with that same unsettling word. One memo confirmed that a physicist from the National Defense Research Committee had reviewed Tesla's materials shortly after the seizure and noted their potential value to national defense. Still, the documents themselves were nowhere to be found. To this day, no researcher, historian, or government agency has ever admitted to holding the missing files. They've never been released, never surfaced, never been confirmed destroyed. They simply disappeared. And for years,
for decades, most historians dismissed the assistant's tale as a dramatic memory from a woman who had lived through an extraordinary night. Her recollections of vibrating ground, glowing air, and silent watchers felt more like folklore than physics. But everything changed when a fragile reel-to-reel tape, her final recorded testimony, surfaced in a New York estate sale almost 50 years after her death. A group of researchers managed to restore the damaged audio, and what emerged was unsettling. Her voice, thin and trembling with age, described the 1903 experiment with the same fear she remembered from that night. She spoke about the sky ripping open above the tower, the air buzzing with energy, and the strange pressure in the ground that made it feel like the earth itself was reacting. For a long time, this recording remained a curiosity, interesting but unverified. Then, a historian named Dr. Andrew Connet found something that changed everything. A set of archived telegraph logs from stations along the eastern seaboard. The entries from the night of the Warden Cliff experiment told a story eerily similar to what the assistant described. Operators wrote that their signals were swallowed by a strange, steady interference they couldn't trace. Compasses twisted, galvanometers spiked. They described the disturbance as constant, unnatural, and unlike anything produced by storms. At nearly the same hour, magnetic observatories across the Atlantic recorded an unexplained pulse, one that matched the frequency Tesla himself once claimed would resonate with the Earth's natural electrical field. When modern physicists mapped these readings, the pattern centered almost perfectly on Shoreham, New York, and the pulse didn't vanish instantly. It faded slowly over the course of roughly 40 minutes before returning to normal. This wasn't an isolated anomaly. Years later, a declassified file from the National Defense Research Committee mentioned a persistent geophysical signal consistent with Tesla's resonance predictions. Though the wording was cautious, it strongly implied that the 1903 test may have triggered a temporary electrical excitation within the Earth's crust, an effect far larger than anything Tesla intended. Some scientists who reviewed the data suggested that Tesla had accidentally energized a natural conductive pathway, essentially turning part of the planet into a resonant transmitter. If true, the assistant's terrified description of the ground humming like it was alive might not have been poetic exaggeration at all. The strangest discovery came much more recently. Modern researchers who sampled the soil near the former Warden Cliff site found faint, irregular electrical fluctuations occurring at nearly the same frequency documented in Tesla's surviving notes. These signals were tiny, barely above noise level, but consistent over time, repeating like a heartbeat buried deep under layers of static. Some say it's interference from modern power lines. Others believe it's environmental noise. But a few, those who know Tesla's work best, believe something else, that the midnight test didn't fully die when Tesla shut down the tower, that a trace of the experiment, however faint, is still echoing beneath the ground, still beating, still repeating the same rhythm that started on that night in 1903. And if that's true, then the real question becomes impossible.
As interest in Tesla revived in the late 20th century, researchers kept returning to the same missing pieces: the vanished journals, the confiscated devices, the strange officials who showed up at Warden Cliff, and the unexplained relocation notes in government files. For years, people assumed the truth would never emerge, but the answer didn't come from a vault or a leak. It came from a detail so ordinary that almost everyone had overlooked it. During Tesla's later years, he published dozens of articles in obscure engineering bulletins, small technical journals no larger than pamphlets. Most historians skimmed them, thinking Tesla had simply rehashed old theories or offered diluted versions of earlier lectures. But one engineer, a quiet researcher named Daniel Carr, noticed something no one else had connected. In several of Tesla's last articles, the diagrams weren't complete. Circuits cut off abruptly, measurements stopped mid-line, equations reference variables that never appeared. At first, it looked like sloppy drafting from an aging inventor, but the more Carr studied the pages, the more intentional the gap seemed. One night, after overlaying multiple diagrams from different years, he realized something astonishing. The missing pieces aligned perfectly. Tesla hadn't been sloppy. He had been hiding a master blueprint across separate publications, scattering fragments so no single document revealed anything dangerous. When the pages were combined, they formed a complete system, a scaled-down version of Warden Cliff's energy transmitter. Even stranger, the combined blueprint showed a component that no surviving photograph of Warden Cliff ever displayed: a rotating conductor buried deep underground, wired into a grounding chamber that matched descriptions from the assistant's lost testimonial notes. This device wasn't mentioned in patent filings or construction plans. It existed only in Tesla's private writings and the scattered coded diagram. When Carr brought his findings to a small circle of physicists, at first they doubted him until one of them recognized a pattern in the equation. The values corresponded to frequencies used in early Earth resonance studies conducted secretly during the 1940s and 50s. Experiments that, according to declassified memos, were inspired by an inventor whose earlier work had demonstrated unusual potential. That line was as close as the government ever came to admitting Tesla's influence. But the most disturbing discovery came when Carr checked the diagrams against seismic data recorded in Long Island around the time Warden Cliff was active. He found faint, rhythmic disturbances, small, periodic signatures that lined up with the blueprint's predicted output cycle. It was the same pattern modern researchers detected in the soil, and the same pattern described in the assistant's reel-to-reel recording: a pulse, a repetition, a mechanical heartbeat. The implications were staggering. Tesla had designed Warden Cliff to tap into the planet itself, not metaphorically, literally. His tower wasn't just a transmitter, it was a resonant pump, pushing energy into the Earth and drawing it back in a controlled loop. And if the test in 1903 activated even a fraction of that mechanism, then shutting down the tower may not have stopped the process entirely. It may have only disconnected the surface machinery, vibrate. The deeper resonance, the one Tesla released beneath the tower, could still be out there echoing through the ground in ways modern instruments barely detect. This possibility explains more than the lingering signal. It explains why officials appeared the night of the test, why the project was smothered so abruptly, why the journals vanished under the label relocated, and why Tesla scattered a hidden blueprint across years of publications. He realized someone would eventually come.
Decades have passed since the Warden Cliff Tower stood tall, and yet Tesla's work refuses to fade from memory. Even in ruins, it left behind traces that challenge everything we think we know about energy, resonance, and the Earth itself. Engineers and scientists who have studied Tesla's notes, or even just a few fragments that survive, consistently encounter the same unsettling patterns: small, inexplicable energy fluctuations, recurring signals, and anomalies in local magnetic fields that defy conventional explanation. His assistant's recordings, the declassified logs, and faint electromagnetic readings all point to the same truth. Warden Cliff didn't just fail or get shut down. Something from that experiment remained active, somewhere beneath the soil, quietly echoing its original rhythm, and that persistence is what terrifies some researchers the most. Tesla may have left behind more than ideas. He may have left a piece of a system the world never understood, and that could never fully be turned off. Even now, private investigators and hobbyist scientists visit the former tower site. They come with sensitive instruments and notebooks, hoping to detect the faint pulse Tesla once awakened. Reports vary, but most describe the same eerie sensation: a subtle vibration, an energy that feels alive, and instruments twitching in a rhythm no one can predict. For those who know the history, it's a reminder that Tesla's ambitions never truly ended, that the resonance he unleashed is still present, silent, hidden, and incomplete. What remains most striking is how Tesla's vision continues to inspire curiosity, speculation, and even fear. The missing journals, the scattered blueprints, the confiscated machinery, and the testimonies of those few who witnessed it. These pieces all form a puzzle that modern science still struggles to solve. Every discovery raises new questions, and every anomaly hints at a reality far beyond conventional understanding. Tesla's Warden Cliff Tower, though long gone, left behind more than just debris. It left a legacy of potential, the possibility that energy could be transmitted wirelessly, universally, and without limits. And while the world may never see the full scope of what he tried to achieve, the lingering resonance beneath Shoreham is a silent echo of what could have been, a whisper from the past reminding us that one man's vision once brushed against the impossible. And now, after more than a century, the central question lingers louder than ever. If Tesla's tower truly tapped into the Earth's natural energy, what might still be waiting beneath the surface? By the time Tesla passed away in 1943, the Warden Cliff Tower had already been dismantled, and his most sensitive research had vanished into government hands. But the story of why it was silenced is as mysterious as the experiment itself. Tesla wasn't just a brilliant inventor, he was a man daring to challenge entrenched powers, corporations, and governments that had built empires on controlling energy. A device capable of transmitting power freely across the globe was more than a scientific breakthrough. It was a threat to the foundations of industrial and military dominance. The sudden withdrawal of funding, the unexplained inspections, the relocated journals, and the confiscation of his effects weren't coincidences. Every step points to one truth. Tesla's work at Warden Cliff struck fear into the hearts of those who controlled the flow of power. Free, wireless energy wasn't just impractical, it was dangerous to their influence, profits, and authority. And they acted decisively to ensure it never left his tower. Yet despite the erasure, fragments of Tesla's vision endured. His scattered publications, the assistant's recordings, and the faint electromagnetic echoes beneath the tower site all suggest that Tesla's achievements were never entirely destroyed. The world may never fully understand the potential of what he created, but the evidence hints at a capability that modern science is only beginning to comprehend. Energy liberated from wires, flowing invisibly through the earth and atmosphere, a legacy of a man who dreamed beyond the limits of his era. Tesla may have been silenced, but his resonance lingers, not just in equipment or documents, but in the possibilities his inventions opened. And if even a trace of that power remains beneath the earth, It serves as Tesla's Warden Cliff Tower may have been dismantled, his journals confiscated, and his dreams suppressed. But the story doesn't end there. Every trace of his experiment, the assistant's recordings, the faint electrical pulses in the soil, and the hidden blueprints scattered across decades of publications reminds us that some inventions are never truly lost. Tesla reached for a vision that was centuries ahead of his time, one that promised energy without borders, without wires, without cost. What happened that night in 1903 was more than a technical experiment. It was a glimpse of a reality most people thought impossible, a planet temporarily electrified, resonating with the pulse of human ingenuity. The world may never know the full scope of what Tesla achieved, but the lingering traces suggest that the resonance he unleashed continues, quietly defying our understanding. And perhaps that's the most remarkable part. Tesla's work wasn't just about electricity or machines. It was about freedom, the freedom to imagine, to experiment, and to change the rules of the world itself. Even in the absence of full knowledge, the echoes of Warden Cliff Tower challenge us to ask the same question Tesla must have asked himself. What if the impossible is simply waiting for someone brave enough to try? Tesla's legacy isn't just in what he built or what was taken from him. It's in the pulse that still lingers beneath the earth, in the idea that human curiosity can reach further than any boundary imposed by fear, power, or convention. And as long as that pulse exists, the mystery of Warden Cliff Tower endures, reminding us that one man's vision can reverberate